You think you know Contact? You don't know the half of it. The White House sent an actual cease-and-desist-style letter 3 days before this movie hit theaters. CNN's own CEO went on record calling his network's involvement a mistake. Jodie Foster spent days sobbing at a tennis ball taped to a stick. And the man who fought for 17 years to get this film made never lived to see a single frame of it projected on a screen. This is not a cute, harmless sci-fi movie trivia list. This is a story about a deepfake that enraged a sitting president, a lawsuit filed just 8 days after a beloved scientist's death, a hidden ending detail that flips the entire moral of the film on its head, and a studio that was willing to bury the truth for a better box office weekend. Today we're not doing 15 facts. We're doing 20. 5 brand new reveals plus 1 bonus fact nobody talks about, all shuffled up and ranked by how much they'll make you rewatch this movie completely differently. Buckle up, because Contact is a lot more controversial than your nostalgia goggles remember. Let's get into it. 1. Francis Ford Coppola sued the dying man's estate. On December 28, 1996, just 8 days after Carl Sagan died, Francis Ford Coppola filed a lawsuit against Warner Brothers and Sagan's estate. Read that again. 8 days. The body wasn't even cold, and Hollywood lawyers were already circling. Coppola claimed Sagan's novel was actually built on a story the two of them developed together decades earlier for a 1975 television special called First Contact. Under their original handshake agreement, they were supposed to split proceeds from that project, and from any novel Sagan might eventually write from it. The TV special never got made. But in 1985, Simon & Schuster published Contact as a novel anyway, and by the mid-90s, Warner Brothers was rolling cameras. Coppola wanted at least $250,000 in damages, and he wanted an injunction to stop the film from being released entirely. Imagine that. One of the most acclaimed directors in film history trying to legally block a movie from ever reaching audiences, timed to a grieving widow's worst month of her life. In February 1998, Judge Ricardo Torres finally dismissed the claim. The judge actually agreed that Sagan had likely violated some contract terms, but ruled that Coppola had simply waited too long to file. By then, Contact had already been released and had already become a box office success. Sometimes, timing is everything. Sometimes it works against you, and sometimes it makes you look like you tried to profit off a corpse. What makes it even messier is that Coppola and Sagan had reportedly been friendly collaborators decades earlier, which means this wasn't some cold, distant corporate dispute between strangers. It was a falling out between two men who once sat in a room together dreaming up humanity's first fictional contact with an alien civilization, and it ended in a courtroom instead of a credits roll. To this day, Coppola's name appears nowhere in Contact's official credits, even though a judge acknowledged Sagan likely breached parts of their original agreement. The lawsuit vanished from headlines almost as quickly as it appeared, buried under the bigger controversies still to come. 2. The alien signal is secretly Adolf Hitler. This is the fact that should be at the top of every trivia list and somehow never is. When Ellie Arroway first decodes the mysterious transmission from deep space, what does humanity actually receive back? Not a friendly greeting. Not a mathematical olive branch. It's a rebroadcast of Adolf Hitler's opening address at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, the first television signal ever powerful enough to escape Earth's atmosphere and bleed out into the cosmos. The aliens didn't send us poetry. They sent us back our own ugliest propaganda broadcast, essentially using it as a kind of cosmic return to sender stamp to prove the signal's authenticity. Think about the audacity of that storytelling choice. A movie about humanity's greatest hope for connection with another intelligence opens that connection with Nazi footage. It's unsettling, it's darkly ironic, and it's barely ever discussed compared to the Clinton deepfake drama. Sagan and the filmmakers wanted to make a specific point. This is literally the loudest, strongest signal we ever sent into space, whether we're proud of it or not. It's humanity's own worst moment, echoed back to us by beings we don't understand. That's not a cute plot device. That's a gut punch, hiding in plain sight. It's also a detail that rewards repeat viewings in a way most blockbusters never bother attempting. The first time you watch Contact, the Hitler broadcast plays as a clever twist, a moment of relief that the signal is real, dressed up as a puzzle box for Ellie's team to crack. The second time you watch it, knowing exactly what that broadcast represents historically. The scene turns unsettling in an entirely different way. Sagan wasn't interested in easy, comforting answers about who we are as a species. He wanted the first thing another civilization ever learns about humanity to be complicated, embarrassing, and true, and that choice alone tells you everything about how seriously this film took its own philosophy. 3. The Bill Clinton deepfake made the actual White House furious. 3 days. That's how close Warner Brothers came to a full-blown political incident before Contact ever premiered. Director Robert Zemeckis took real footage of President Bill Clinton from an August 1996 press conference and digitally edited it to make it look like Clinton was addressing the alien signal from the movie. In reality, Clinton had been talking about a Mars rock that scientists believed might contain evidence of ancient bacteria. Totally different topic, completely repurposed. The White House was not amused, and they let everyone know it. White House counsel Charles Ruff called the appearance inappropriate. Press Secretary Mike McCurry argued there's a huge difference between using a president's actual words and putting words in the president's mouth that make the public believe he said something he never said. Warner Brothers admitted, on the record, that they never received formal permission. They had sent scripts and a finished print over to the administration, but never actually got a signed release. And here's the wild part. The scene stayed in the movie. It's still there in every single copy of Contact you can watch today. Imagine getting an angry letter from the actual sitting president of the United States 3 days before your movie premiere, and just deciding to release it anyway. That's not a footnote. That's corporate nerve. Warner Brothers never publicly apologized for the sequence, and Zemeckis never recut it out of later home video releases either. Decades before deepfake technology became a mainstream political anxiety, with lawmakers debating legislation and tech companies scrambling to build detection tools, Contact had already quietly demonstrated exactly how convincing and how politically dangerous the technique could be, using nothing more exotic than 1997-era digital compositing software and a few days of careful frame-by-frame work. In hindsight, the controversy looks less like a footnote and more like an early warning shot. 4. Carl Sagan died before he ever saw his own dream on screen. This is the one that turns the whole conversation from fun movie trivia into something genuinely heavy. Carl Sagan wrote the novel Contact, had been fighting to get it adapted since 1979, 17 years. He and his wife, Anne Druyan, wrote the original film treatment and spent nearly 2 decades developing this project across multiple studios and multiple directors, watching it almost die more than once. In 1994, Sagan was diagnosed with myelodysplasia, a rare and aggressive bone marrow disease. He fought it for 2 brutal years, undergoing 3 separate bone marrow transplants. On December 20, 1996, Sagan died of pneumonia at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle. He was 62 years old. The film was still deep in post-production. Contact wouldn't hit theaters until July 11, 1997, a full 7 months after his death. The movie closes with a quiet, simple dedication. 2 words fade onto the screen. For Carl. 17 years of relentless work, and he never got to sit in a dark theater and watch the finished film play out in front of an audience. That single detail changes how every other fact on this list should hit you. It also means every joke, every deepfake controversy, every studio compromise on this list happened to a story that its own author fought his entire adult life to tell, and then quietly lost the chance to see finished. Anne Druyan has spoken publicly over the years about how much it meant to her that the dedication stayed simple. 2 words. No fanfare. Exactly the kind of understated tribute Sagan himself would have appreciated more than a splashy title card ever could. 5. Ellie's space pod was equipped with a cyanide pill. Here's a controversy that barely gets mentioned today, but it raised eyebrows in 1997. Tucked into Ellie's mission gear for her journey through the alien-built machine was a cyanide capsule, a literal suicide pill, packed in case the mission went catastrophically wrong and she needed a way out on her own terms. For a PG-rated studio blockbuster marketed heavily as an inspiring, family-friendly science fiction epic about hope and discovery, quietly including a state-sanctioned suicide device as standard astronaut equipment is a genuinely dark adult beat. It's barely lingered on in the film itself, but it's there, and it reflects just how seriously Sagan and the filmmakers treated the real psychological stakes of sending a human being alone into the literal unknown, with no guarantee of return, no support system, and no way to communicate. It's a small prop with an enormous implication. This was never framed as a safe, sanitized field trip. It was framed as a mission people might not survive, and everyone involved knew it going in. Some viewers at the time argued the detail was unnecessarily grim for a mainstream summer release aimed at families and curious teenagers drawn in by the marketing around aliens and space travel. Others argued it was exactly the kind of unflinching honesty Sagan demanded from every version of this story. Going all the way back to the original novel, where the psychological toll of true first contact was never treated as a footnote. 6. CNN journalists nearly destroyed their own credibility. This one genuinely rattled the news industry. Contact featured 13 real CNN reporters and anchors playing themselves on camera. Larry King, Bernard Shaw, Bobby Batista, and more, all reporting on the fictional alien contact as if it were breaking authentic news coverage. It triggered a massive ethics scandal almost immediately. The problem was simple but serious. It blurred the line between real journalism and pure fiction. Viewers could genuinely walk away confused about what was actual CNN reporting and what was scripted movie content. CNN's own CEO, Tom Johnson, had initially approved the participation, treating it as good cross-promotion for the summer movie season. But once the backlash exploded, Johnson publicly admitted, on record, that it was a mistake. His exact words, "The decision created the impression that CNN is manipulated by Time Warner, since both CNN and Warner Brothers were owned by the same parent company at the time." Eric Ober, the former president of CBS News, piled on too, saying it blurs the line between fact and fiction and erodes the credibility of journalists. Johnson eventually put new rules in place requiring that any future movie appearances by CNN staff would need clearance from CNN's own internal ethics group. All because somebody in a marketing meeting wanted a little extra summer buzz. 7. The blind scientist's name is a secret Superman joke. Buried in the cast of brilliant researchers is a character named Kent Clark, a blind physicist with enhanced hearing played by William Fichtner. Say the name out loud. Kent Clark. Clark Kent. It's a sly, almost throwaway reference to Superman's secret mundane identity hidden inside a serious science fiction drama about first contact with an alien civilization. It's the kind of detail that reveals just how much wit and playfulness was baked into a movie that otherwise takes itself extremely seriously, wrestling with faith, science, grief, and the fundamental nature of truth. It's a wink to the audience buried in the credits that most viewers scroll right past, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it in every scene the character appears in. 8. They digitally built entire canyons around a real government facility. The Very Large Array Radio Telescope facility in New Mexico is where Ellie discovers the alien signal, and the filmmakers really did shoot on location there. One problem: the actual VLA sits on a completely flat plane. No drama, no visual grandeur, nothing but open desert. Director Robert Zemeckis wanted the location to feel more isolated, more mythic, more impressive on camera. So the visual effects team digitally added massive canyons and dramatic rock formations around the satellite dishes that don't exist in reality. Those towering cliffs and rugged geological features surrounding the dishes in the film are entirely computer-generated. The digital matte paintings were blended seamlessly with live-action footage of the real facility. Most viewers assumed they were watching authentic New Mexico landscape. They were actually looking at a heavily altered version of reality, engineered purely for dramatic effect. This kind of invisible manipulation runs through nearly the entire film. Contact feels grounded, real, and documentary-like, but almost nothing you see on screen is unaltered. 9. The project spent almost 2 decades trapped in development hell. Before Robert Zemeckis ever touched this material, Contact spent close to 20 years bouncing between studios, screenwriters, and at least 3 other directors who were attached and then walked away or were replaced. Roland Joffe was attached at one point. George Miller, the director behind the Mad Max films, was also connected to the project at a different stage. Michael Apted was involved as well before the whole thing eventually landed with Zemeckis, fresh off Forrest Gump. Sagan and Druyan spent years rewriting treatments, pitching to different studio executives, and watching the project stall out again and again, only for it to get revived. This wasn't a quick, clean adaptation of a best-selling novel. It was a grinding, nearly 2-decade odyssey through Hollywood indecision, and Sagan fought for every single year of it. Determined to see his vision of humanity's first contact with an alien intelligence make it to the big screen exactly the way he imagined it, with the science treated as sacred rather than decorative. 10. The iconic mirror shot wasn't a mirror at all. You know this scene. Young Ellie sprints up the stairs to grab medicine for her dying father. It plays out as one continuous, unbroken shot until we suddenly realize we've actually been watching everything unfold as a reflection inside a bathroom cabinet mirror. Here's the secret. There was no mirror. The entire sequence was built through inventive compositing, using multiple shots stitched together with blue screen work. A Steadicam operator strapped with a VistaVision camera physically ran backward up the stairs directly in front of young actress Jana Malone. The shot ramps from 24 to 40, 8 frames per second to create that dreamlike slow-motion feeling as Ellie reaches the bathroom. The medicine cabinet itself had a blue screen standing in for where the mirror should be. Visual effects supervisor Ken Ralston's team composited the 2 shots together so seamlessly that the cabinet handle appears to swing into view from the lower left as the camera pulls back exactly as it would in a real reflection. They even had to digitally paint out the focus puller, a crew member who was accidentally visible in the original footage. Zemeckis wanted to convey Ellie's torment without ever actually showing her father dying on screen, and this impossible invisible seam shot achieves exactly that. No mirror required, just pure obsessive editing magic. 11. They secretly changed a child actor's eye color in every frame. Jana Malone, who played young Ellie, has brown eyes. Jodie Foster, who plays adult Ellie, has blue eyes. That's a serious continuity problem when they're supposed to be the exact same person at 2 different ages. The solution the visual effects team landed on was staggering in scope. They digitally color-corrected Jana Malone's eyes to blue in absolutely every single frame she appears in throughout the entire film. Every frame. Back in 1997, this was painstaking, borderline experimental work. Digital color correction was still new and extremely time-consuming. The process required combing through thousands of individual frames, carefully adjusting only the eye color without disturbing the surrounding facial features, lighting, or shadow detail. The effect turned out so seamless that even film critics analyzing Contact scene by scene never caught it at the time. Most casual viewers still have absolutely no idea they're watching digitally altered eyes every single time young Ellie is on screen. That's how good the work actually was. 12. Matthew McConaughey was cast specifically to make religion sexy. In Carl Sagan's original novel, the character of Palmer Joss is much older and portrayed as a far more rigid, dogmatic religious fanatic, standing in direct ideological opposition to Ellie's scientific worldview. The film version is dramatically softened. The filmmakers cast a young, charismatic Matthew McConaughey specifically to create a magnetic, thoughtful religious philosopher who could generate real romantic tension with Jodie Foster's character. McConaughey reportedly dropped out of the lead role in The Jackal to take this part instead. Sagan himself wasn't thrilled with the change. Softening the character diluted the sharper, more confrontational science versus faith conflict that was central to his novel. But the studio believed a romantic subplot would make the film significantly more commercially appealing to mainstream audiences. McConaughey's Palmer Joss became a questioning, sympathetic spiritual figure rather than a dogmatic opponent, which fundamentally altered the entire dynamic of the science versus faith debate running through the story. The on-screen chemistry between Foster and McConaughey became one of the film's biggest emotional anchors. Whether that trade-off served Sagan's original vision or diluted it depends entirely on who you ask. As a preacher, and more as a genuine seeker. 13. Jodie Foster's own real-life beliefs mirrored her character, and it stirred controversy. Jodie Foster has been open about identifying as an atheist in real life, which lines up almost perfectly with Ellie Arroway's fierce commitment to evidence-based reasoning and her skepticism toward religious faith throughout the film. That overlap didn't go unnoticed. Some religious commentators and watchdog groups at the time accused Contact of using its balanced science versus faith framing as a thin disguise for a film that ultimately favored secular scientific reasoning, casting organized religion and its representatives in a more skeptical or even antagonistic light, especially through the character of a violent religious extremist who commits an act of terrorism midway through the film. Other viewers pushed back hard, arguing the film actually goes out of its way to validate faith by ending on an act of pure, unprovable belief that mirrors religious conviction almost exactly. The debate over whether Contact is a pro-science film wearing a faith-friendly mask or a genuinely balanced meditation on both worldviews has never fully settled, and Foster's own personal beliefs bleeding into her most famous role only added more fuel to that ongoing argument. Interviewers repeatedly pressed her on whether she saw Ellie as a mouthpiece for her own worldview, and Foster largely deflected, insisting the character's journey was about intellectual honesty rather than picking a side. That answer satisfied almost nobody in the debate, which is probably exactly why the argument never actually went away. 14. That otherworldly machine sound is just a washing machine. The massive alien-designed machine that transports Ellie through space produces those distinctive, unsettling, otherworldly sounds as its three enormous rings spin up before activation. What you're actually hearing is a washing machine. The sound design team recorded a standard household washing machine, then slowed the audio down and heavily manipulated it using Pro Tools, which was still relatively new technology in film post-production at the time. The spinning, humming, grinding noises that accompany the machine's activation sequence are all derived from that one household appliance. The machine's visual design itself was inspired by a combination of ancient astrolabes and futuristic technology, and the sound designers wanted audio that felt simultaneously familiar and completely alien. A washing machine turned out to be perfect for that goal. Its mechanical rhythms are recognizable to the human ear on a subconscious level, yet they can be transformed into something far more mysterious and unsettling with enough processing. Next time you watch that scene, listen closely. That's Laundry Day, dressed up as interstellar engineering. Sound designers on major studio films have quietly reused this trick for decades. Since ordinary household appliances often produce exactly the kind of mechanical, rhythmic textures that feel uncanny once they're pitched down and layered with reverb, and Contact remains one of the most famous examples of the technique actually being confirmed publicly. 15. Almost every single sky in this movie is fake. This one surprises people every time. Director Robert Zemeckis wanted the stars and clouds throughout Contact to look painterly and slightly surreal rather than photographically ordinary. So the visual effects team replaced the real sky in almost all of the film's outdoor shots. Almost all of them. Even scenes that appear to be simple, straightforward location filming, actors just standing outside having a conversation, have digitally composited skies layered in behind them. The filmmakers felt that real, unaltered skies simply didn't carry the epic, otherworldly quality they wanted for a film fundamentally about humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. The digital skies were carefully crafted to feel dreamlike and heightened without ever looking obviously fake or artificial. This was an extremely ambitious undertaking for 1997, when digital compositing was still difficult, expensive, and time-consuming. Most viewers assume they're looking at real, untouched location photography throughout the film. In reality, they're seeing heavily manipulated imagery in nearly every single outdoor frame. Zemeckis controlled the mood of practically every exterior shot in the entire movie. That's not just careful filmmaking, that's borderline obsessive. It also means the film's visual identity, the thing that makes contact feel so distinct from other science fiction of its era, was never really about where they pointed the camera. It was about what they painted back into the frame afterward, shot by shot, cloud by cloud, until the whole world of the film felt subtly unreal even in its quietest, most grounded moments. 16. The opening shot alone took months to build, and it was record-breaking. The film's opening scene pulls back continuously from Earth through the solar system, and all the way out to the literal edge of the observable universe, with radio signals audibly fading as we move farther and farther away from home. It runs roughly 3 minutes long as one continuous shot. At the time of release, it was the longest single computer-generated shot ever created for a film. The sequence took months of dedicated work from multiple visual effects houses working in tandem. Industrial Light and Magic, Sony Pictures Imageworks, and Weta Digital all contributed different effects throughout the film. Crucially, this shot had to be scientifically accurate, depicting the solar system, the Milky Way, and deep space structures all correctly, while simultaneously being visually breathtaking enough to open a major studio film. The shot exists to establish the almost incomprehensible scale of the universe and humanity's tiny, fragile place within it, a theme that was absolutely essential to Carl Sagan's original vision for the story. 3 minutes doesn't sound especially long by today's standards, but in 1997, producing 3 minutes of continuous, scientifically grounded space travel imagery was genuinely groundbreaking work. Multiple visual effects artists who worked on the sequence later described it as one of the most technically demanding assignments of their careers, requiring entirely new workflows just to keep the shot from breaking down into visible seams as the camera raced from Earth's atmosphere out past the edge of the Milky Way and into open intergalactic space. 17. Jodie Foster called this her single hardest acting challenge ever. Picture this: Jodie Foster strapped into a chair, shaking, hyperventilating, sobbing at a tennis ball mounted on a stick for days on end. That was the reality of filming the space travel sequence. Foster was completely alone in front of a blue screen with nothing physical to react to except that tennis ball, which marked exactly where the alien wormhole would eventually appear in the finished visual composite. She later said, on record, that it was the hardest acting challenge of her entire career. No other actors to play off of, no physical sets, no real environment, nothing but her own imagination, while technicians shook her chair violently and pointed harsh lights directly at her face to simulate the chaos of interstellar travel. The final sequence lasts several minutes on screen and features some of the film's most stunning visual effects. Foster had to sustain intense, raw emotional states for hours of continuous filming against literally nothing but an empty blue void. Her performance had to be powerful enough on its own to carry scenes that would later be filled in with spectacular, elaborate CG. She absolutely pulled it off. But, by her own account, it cost her something real to get there. Crew members on set later recalled that between takes, Foster would sit in near silence, conserving the emotional energy she needed to summon on command, take after take, for a scene where the only scene partner in the room was a tennis ball on a stick and her own imagination doing all the heavy lifting. 18. The 18 hours of static prove Ellie was telling the truth all along. Here's the detail most casual viewers miss entirely, and it completely reframes the ending of the film. After Ellie returns from her journey, the government publicly claims that nothing actually happened during the machine's test run, that her entire experience was some kind of delusion or malfunction. Case closed as far as the public is concerned. Except there's one crucial, damning piece of evidence buried in the plot. Ellie's recording equipment shows 18 hours of continuous static, which is the exact duration she claims to have experienced during her journey, even though everyone watching from the control room witnessed the machine drop her for only a few seconds. That physical proof directly vindicates her entire account, but the government officials in the story deliberately choose to withhold that evidence from both Ellie and the public. The 18-hour recording is mentioned almost in passing during a private conversation between two government officials near the end of the film. They know something genuinely unexplainable occurred, and they're actively covering it up. This single detail transforms the entire meaning of the ending. It's no longer a simple story about faith versus evidence. It becomes a story about physical evidence being deliberately, quietly suppressed by people in power. Carl Sagan believed science should guide our understanding of reality, but he also understood, deeply, that proof can be hidden for political convenience. Watch the ending again. Listen carefully to that conversation. It changes everything about how you read this film. Once you know that detail is there, the entire final act stops being a simple parable about faith needing no proof, and starts feeling like a quiet indictment of institutions that demand proof from ordinary people while conveniently hiding proof of their own the moment it becomes politically inconvenient. 19. The book's original ending was removed, and it was far more mind-bending. The novel's ending is completely different from the film, and it's arguably far more radical. In Sagan's book, Ellie eventually discovers a hidden message buried impossibly deep within the digits of pi. When she calculates pi out to trillions of decimal places, she finds an unmistakable pattern, a circle perfectly inscribed inside a square and coded in binary, buried inside one of the most fundamental constants in all of mathematics. The implication of that discovery is staggering. It suggests the universe itself was deliberately engineered by some vastly ancient intelligence that embedded hidden messages directly into the fundamental fabric of mathematics itself. Reality, in other words, was designed on purpose. The film cut this revelation entirely, leaving the ending far more ambiguous and personal. The filmmakers felt the pi message would be nearly impossible to dramatize visually in a satisfying way, and worried it might undercut the film's more grounded themes about faith and evidence colliding in one woman's testimony. Removing it also allowed the film to end on Ellie's personal, emotional journey rather than making one giant, definitive cosmic statement about the nature of existence. The change disappointed longtime fans of the novel who loved Sagan's original concept, proof that reality was engineered, hidden inside mathematics itself, quietly waiting for any civilization intelligent enough to eventually find it. It's a genuinely stunning idea, and it never made it to the screen at all. Sagan reportedly understood the studio's reasoning even if he didn't love it, since dramatizing an infinite mathematical pattern buried inside pi is an almost impossible visual problem. But longtime readers of the book have never stopped wondering what a truly faithful adaptation of that ending might have looked like on a modern screen with modern visual effects budgets behind it. 20. And this is the bonus fact. The film barely beat its own budget, and it lost its opening weekend. Here's the numbers nobody brings up when they talk about how beloved this movie is. Contact was made on a substantial $90 million production budget, a serious bet for a cerebral science fiction drama built around a female scientist's spiritual and intellectual journey rather than explosions or a clear villain. On its opening weekend, it actually landed in second place at the box office, pulling in roughly $20 million, trailing behind Men in Black, one of the biggest blockbusters of that entire summer. It wasn't the runaway smash its pedigree might suggest on paper. But the film had strong legs, meaning it held on to audiences steadily over time rather than collapsing after its first weekend, eventually climbing to a worldwide total of roughly $171 million. That's a solid outcome, but hardly a dominant one for a film based on a best-selling novel by one of the most famous scientists in American history. Backed by a major studio, a beloved director fresh off Forrest Gump, and a full-blown political controversy generating free publicity before it even opened. Contact earned its legacy slowly through critical respect and cultural staying power, not through a blockbuster opening weekend. So, out of all 20 facts, which one actually shocked you the most? Was it the White House sending an angry letter 3 days before the premiere? Was it Francis Ford Coppola suing a dead man's estate just 8 days after he passed? Was it discovering the alien signal is secretly Adolf Hitler? Or was it that hidden detail buried in the ending 18 hours of static that proves the government lied? Drop your answer in the comments. Tell us which fact you're going to bring up the next time someone claims they've already seen this movie 100 times. Subscribe and hit that bell, because we've got a lot more classic sci-fi secrets coming your way. See you in the next one.